Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 4 o'clock. So can I welcome you to the strategic planning meeting here at County Hall on Tuesday, the 5th of April. Normally I just start the meeting by going through the procedure we follow at the Planning Committee. As Chair, I normally introduce the item, make sure that the members have all had a look at our site visit videos. Then I ask the planning officer to present the report, giving us any updates, any changes to the recommendations. We then come to the part that deals with public speaking. We've got 5 minutes for objectors, 5 minutes for a local member, a parish councillor, county councillor, and then 5 minutes for the applicant or supporter of the application. I then ask members of the committee to put questions to our planning officers, and then we debate the application itself. Ask for a proposal, second it, debate, and then we take a vote on the application. Thank you. Apologies for absence. Have there been any apologies for absence for this meeting? Leslie?
I've received apologies from Councillor Reid.
Just Councillor Reid. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting held on Tuesday, the 1st of March, have been circulated. Are members happy that these are a true record of the meeting and that I can sign them? Thank you very much indeed. Have any members of the Planning Committee got any disclosures of interest that they wish to declare? No disclosures? No. So then we come to determination of planning applications. We've only got one application before us today, and that relates to land northeast of New Hartley, St Michael's Avenue, New Hartley in Northumberland. This is a Verico application, already has planning permission, but the applicant wishes to change the conditions. I'll just go through very briefly what those are. So, variation of condition 2, approved plans. 3, phasing details. 4, obscure glass glazing. 5, street lighting details. 7, the planting plan. 9, level details. 11, highways works. 14, refuge storage facilities. 16, surface water drainage infrastructure. 18, disposal of surface water. 23, noise mitigation. And 25, trees. On the approved application 21/02638/Verico, to allow changes to the site layout and the mix of housing types. Can I just say, obviously this application was given permission a long time ago, 2015. Part of the application has already been built out, which relates to 101 houses, and we're looking at the rest of that application, 184 properties on which the conditions want to be changed. So it comes to committee because of all the changes that are on it, and also the fact that it was quite a controversial application when it was approved, quite a chunk of new houses to New Hartley itself. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand you over to our planning officer, Tamsin Wood. Tamsin, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks. So I do have some updates to go through first of all. So the first one is under the consultation responses, under affordable housing, it does say that a plan is needed for the affordable housing scheme. This plan has been submitted and Housing have confirmed that they've got no objection to the scheme now. Also, my second update is that under the consultations, again, in education, I need to add that there was a second response asking for £921,000 towards Seaton Sluice Middle School and local SEND provision. But just to add, though, my report does actually take into account this request, as I've already covered why we aren't asking for an education contribution, so there's no need to change my report as a consequence of that change. Thirdly, I've got 2 conditions that need to be updated to reflect what has previously been approved. So condition 12 needs to be deleted and replaced with: the development shall be carried out in accordance with the framework travel plan agreed under DISCON 12 of 21/02457/DISCON on the 10th of the 12th, 21st, at all times until implementation of a full travel plan approved under condition 13. And also condition 15 needs to be amended slightly. So about the 4th or 5th line down, where it's got for a temporary period of 12 months only, beginning from the date of this permission, I need to delete the word this before planning, the word this before planning permission, and then after planning permission put 21/02638/Verico, so it refers to the correct permission. Since the report has been written, I've also received 2 further objections from Mr. Burrell, who is speaking today. In summary, these set out that there is at least a 1 metre fall between plot 174 and the public right-of-way, which will again result in a footpath link at a gradient steeper than 1 in 12. Highways Development Control have accepted non-compliance of visitor parking standards for this phase. And the lead local flood authority have no objection, provided that the development is built in accordance with the submitted plans, yet it already contravenes what has been approved. Dry swales next to the public right-of-way, designed with a 1 in 3 slope and unprotected, and 1 in 1.5 slope next to the development. The revised site execution strategy also shows differences between the theory and practice. The latest materials and boundary treatment drawn omits any fence alteration to the southwest boundary of plot 106 and adjacent to plot 100. And further south, the proposed fence does not appear to follow what is the current site boundary. So in response to these comments that have been made, Highways have got no objection to the scheme. There isn't a footpath link from plot 174 to the public right-of-way. However, footpaths and their gradients do get checked when submitted for technical approval. So at this stage, if it was found to be unacceptable and a revision was required, then an amendment to the planning permission would also be required, which would probably be through via a non-material amendment. In terms of visitor parking too, this was assessed before the Northumberland local plan was adopted, which was only a few days ago. So it was designed and assessed against the former policies, which it does accord with, which required 1 in 5. So in terms of the swales, the lead local flood authority have also been consulted and have agreed what is shown on the plans. Have agreed what is shown on the plans. And also, if the development is not carried out in accordance with what is shown on the plans, then this is an enforceable matter. But the applicant is aware of this too. In addition, I've also received an email from the lead local flood authority today, who've said that the issues of flood risk and drainage are minor. With the Verico application, the impermeable area of the development has increased slightly, but the drainage engineer has provided some updated calculations, and these demonstrate the previous approved scheme can accommodate the development runoff flows and volumes. Hence, the risk of flooding will not increase on or off site. And I've been on site numerous times to check on the previous approved scheme, and after my last visit, all is in order. So in terms of the boundary treatment also, the proposed fence does follow the southern boundary. The plans have also been revised to show the fence along the boundary and next to plots 106 and 100. The site execution plan also sets out the order the developer is going to build the streets, which may have been deviated from while this permission has been sought, but this will be an approved document now, so the order should follow this from now. That's my updates. Right. So this is, yes, an application to vary the approved plans for the site at New Hartley, where permission was granted for 285 dwellings at appeal. And since then, 3 further planning permissions to amend the scheme or conditions originally approved at appeal have been submitted, although the number of dwellings has always remained unchanged at 285. So construction started on site in December 2020 and 29 dwellings have been constructed. So this slide is just to go through the history, showing you the history of the site. So again, the initial application was refused by Strategic Planning Committee in June 2016 for 285 dwellings. An appeal was lodged against this refusal, and following a public inquiry, the appeal was allowed and planning permission granted in September 2017. Sorry. And then the second application is the 2018 Very Co. So this second application included some minor changes to the layout, just to the southwest corner of the site, where a detached dwelling was swapped with a pair of semi-detached properties, and 2 detached dwellings were swapped with one another. And in connection with these amendments, amendments were also made to a couple of garages and parking for those plots. So these amendments also resulted in some layout changes to plots 1, 5, 6, 12, 13 and 264, in the loss of 6 visitor parking spaces adjacent to the main access road. The loss of the 6 visitor parking spaces adjacent to that access road was considered, however, by highways to be acceptable, because there was still ample visitor parking across the rest of the site. So the third application, which is another Very Co, was also for an amendment to house types across on plots across the full site, and minor amendments also were proposed to the affordable housing units definition in the Section 106 agreement. So the fourth application, which was the one just before this one, was just for a variation of condition 15 in the wording to that. So under that application, no plans were changed. So this slide actually shows the layouts as approved under each of those applications, the original application, then those 2 Very Cos where the plans were changed. So you can see they were really very similar. It's quite hard to see where the changes were, to be honest. All right. So this first slide here, we've got the location plan here and a satellite image of the site. So the site comprises land to the immediate northeast of the village of New Hartley and covers an area of 11.41 hectares. The site is bounded to the west and north and south by existing dwellings within the village, and to the east by the Northumberland line and a watercourse known as the Lyston Burn. Beyond these lie a complex of farm buildings and an open countryside. To the south lies the vehicular highway of St Michael's Avenue, and on the opposite side of this from the appeal site are dwellings as well, and a memorial garden. So this is just a satellite image of the site, a closer image of the site. So this would have been taken towards the beginning of the build, because there's only a few houses on there. So this third slide shows the latest approved plan, which was the Very Code 2 before this current application, and then the proposed layout as well. So the current application only deals with that part of the site, which is to the northern side of the blue line, which is marked on the plan here. So on this part of the site, there are 184 dwellings. So the remaining part of the site has 101 dwellings on there. So no changes are proposed to this part of the site. So this slide shows the same two plans really that were on the previous slide, but at a closer range, so it's more clear. So in terms of this current application, the main changes are to the layout and at the public open space. There have been no changes to the already approved house types, so I won't show details of these, but there are changes to the house types on plots around the site. So as set out in my report, there are now going to be 28 two-bedroom dwellings, which is a reduction by 14 from the previous permission. There's going to be 83 three-bedroom dwellings, which is an increase by 3 units, and 73 four-bedroom dwellings, which is an increase by 11 units. So that's just on this part of the site. I've also set out one of the main objections has been the reduction in the amount of two-bedroom dwellings, and that the amount of larger homes has been increased. So the applicant has confirmed that this is due to the market demand in this location, and this has led to a reconsideration of the proposed house types across the future phase of the approved scheme. And since the pandemic, people are looking for more space for working from home. As such, the local housing market has changed since 2015, when the scheme was initially designed. Notwithstanding this, the reduction just relates to this part of the site. The application is covering, so not the whole site, where there are also the two-bedroom properties. So in total, there'll still be 42 bedroom properties across the whole site, and 33 of these will be affordable. There is also no local housing needs assessment specific to the New Hartley area of the county. The Northumberland local plan under paragraph 7.29 does state the strategic housing market assessment indicates that the majority of need is expected to be for two-bedroom and three-bedroom properties, together with some one-bedroom homes, and there's a small need for larger dwellings of four or more bedrooms. So within the southeast delivery area, the SHMAR also indicates the predominant needs for three-bedroom houses and bungalows at 48%, with some 1/2 bed houses and bungalows at 31%, and only about 12% desiring a 4 or more bedroom house. So the Northumberland local plan also notes that analysis of aspirations and expectations in the SHMAR, however, suggests that on a county-wide basis, there's a greater need for 1- and 2-bedroom bungalows and level access flats, apartments, reflecting the needs to meet the needs of an ageing population. So taking this into account, there isn't any local housing needs assessment for this particular area. We can't really say whether or not 4 bedrooms are really needed in this area or not. So there's not enough evidence there to be able to say there's no need for any further 4-bedroom dwellings or any more 2-bedroom dwellings. I'm just going to show this table now, because in addition, whilst concerns have been received regarding the reduction in the number of 2-bedroom properties, there's also been some objection in terms of a reduction in the number of affordable housing. However, this is not the case. No changes are proposed to the total number, size or tenure of the affordable housing, which remains at 43 units, including 33 2-bed properties and 10 3-bed properties as per the latest approved scheme. So looking at this table, there's still going to be affordable rents. There's going to be 3, 4, 5. So there's going to be 24 2-bed affordable rents, 5 3-bed affordable rented properties, 9 2-bedroom DMVs and 5 3-bedroom DMVs. So going back to the layout, so you can see that there are a number of plots in very similar positions to what was on the last approved plan. But another concern has been in regard to the change in the design of the public open space. So concerns have been received stating that it's been reduced in size and that the feature of the area of the Belvedere, which was that, has been removed. So the applicant has confirmed, however, that the public open space on the proposed revised layout covers an area of 2.91 hectares across the full site, compared to the last approved plan, which included 3 hectares of public open space, or the original layout, which included 2.92 hectares. So under Appendix H of the Northumberland Local Plan, which sets out open space requirements, the proposal would also still exceed the amount of on-site amenity space required quite significantly, as across the overall site only 7,200 square metres would be required compared to the 2.91 hectares that is provided. So the plans do show the scheme will still retain the previously approved areas of open space to the southern and western boundaries, which are currently under construction to this part here. And so I'll just highlight where the open space is provided now. So it's in a very similar position to what was previously approved there. And then, so this is the proposed plan here, and then it'll go up there, and then this is all public open space where the swales are as well. And then to the other side of this site, this is still retained as open space as well, and there's a biodiversity management plan in place for that area. So in addition, whilst it does appear different, the applicant has actually improved the quality of the public open space. Improvements have been made both in terms of biodiversity gains and its recreational value over and above that which formed part of the approved scheme. So this includes enhanced wildlife-friendly landscape features, including larger areas of wildlife flower meadow, more native trees and native hedging. Natural play facilities are also now proposed where no play facilities were proposed. So this is up here where there's going to be a proposed timber trim trail here. And the revision now also creates areas of open space along footpath corridors, which are enclosed by houses rather than roads, making them more user-friendly and attractive, and they have greater ecological benefits. So in addition, as part of this application, we're also now getting a coastal mitigation contribution. And as I said before, the biodiversity management plan, which was discharged under a previous application, still applies to the land to the north east of the site. So whilst objections have also been received regarding the proposed boundary treatment, specifically to the northwest corner of the site adjacent to Hastings Terrace, as a timber fence was shown on the submitted plan instead of the previously approved wall topped with fence, the applicant has acknowledged this discrepancy and updated the plans to now show a high close bordered fence on top of a 600mm wall in this location, as per the previously approved boundary details. In addition to the change in layout, the proposal also includes changes to some conditions. So these changes are really just to make sure that the conditions relate to the correct plans, given the layout has changed. So I've set these changes out in the background to the application at the beginning. So I've just got some photographs now. So these are photographs taken from the eastern side of the site, from Seaburn Avenue, just looking across it. These photographs were taken from Hastings Terrace to the north of the site, looking across the site. And here are some photographs taken from St Michael's Avenue. So these show houses that have already been completed. So the first one is looking across plots 281, 275, 274 and 273 on the front, and these second two photographs are showing houses which are just within the site there. That's it.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
Okay.
We now come to public speaking. We have 3 public speakers this afternoon. We've got John Barrell objecting to the application. We have a representative from Seaton Valley Council, Graham Eastwood, and then we have a supporter of the application, Amy Ward, Planning Manager at Barrett Homes. So, without any further ado, could I ask John Barrell, please, to speak for no more than 5 minutes, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, here we are again. Yet another change. The fifth layout change since 2017. And with each change, the quality of the built environment is reduced. Makes you wonder if Barratts really know what they're doing. But then, of course, they do. They're simply playing the system to their advantage. It's a war of attrition, using small changes that don't really impact so objectors won't notice and eventually give up. But it's less than a week since this council formally adopted its first comprehensive local plan, in which Councillor Sanderson states the plan is about people and places. It seeks to raise the profile of good, locally distinctive design and supportive, more active, healthy lifestyles. Councillor Horncastle adds he's committed to this plan and the way we can work together, using it as a supportive platform for residents' initiatives. Yet the changes being presented now are blatantly contrary to policies HOU 5, Housing Type Mix, QOP 1, Design Principles, QOP 2, Good Design and Amenity, QOP 6, Delivering Well-Designed Places, TRA 4, Parking Provision, and INF 5, Open Spaces. But it's over 20 years since Wayne Hemingway, a member of the Design Council's CABE committee, hit out at the wimpification of Britain's new build homes, accusing major developers of getting away with murder and being hooked on the past, pastiche and profits. Since then, very little has changed. From a leading house builder where people come first, with so many changes, it's not people, but definitely profit that comes first. Barratt know their profit margins and do whatever is necessary to protect them. Their argument that it is what the public wants is false. Like Henry Ford said, you can have every colour as long as it's black. It's all that's on offer. Restricts supply and demand increases prices. Talking to new residents of Churchfields who wanted a 2-bedroom bungalow, they ended up with a 4-bedroom detached. Average house prices in England have increased 171% since 1980. However, the amount of house you actually get keeps getting smaller. Houses are now smaller than they were in the 1930s. There's no room for any storage and you need the garage to house your freezer, tumble dryer, lawnmower and even clothes. You can forget about enforcing Condition 10, requiring garages not to be used for any purpose other than the parking of vehicles. It's already being contravened by new residents. Paragraph 55 of the NPPF is clear. Planning conditions should be kept to a minimum and only imposed where they are necessary, enforceable, precise and reasonable. Experience of this site confirms that on at least 2 points the conditions repeatedly fail. The original design and access statement stated, the site has 3 designated areas of public open space. These areas act as focal points within the wider scheme, with the Belvedere in particular lending unique character to the development. Guess what? The Belvedere's disappeared along with a unique character, to be replaced with a glorified footpath between pastiche houses. The central area that provided a village green effect is now relegated to another footpath link between a cul-de-sac and circulating road. It gives no useful recreational space to anyone. The southern entrance area is only retained because it's already under construction and the houses around it sold. Imagine the backlash if residents didn't get the outlook they paid for. Barratt say that open space has only decreased by 0.1 of a hectare, yet used comparison to a plan originally prepared in 2016. The latest layout was approved as part of an application on the 26th of April 2021. Interestingly, though not surprisingly, it shows the amount of public open space to be confirmed. If public space hasn't substantially decreased, which I still dispute, what's reduced to compensate when net developable area has increased? Answer, adoptable highways, to be replaced by additional lengths of shared drive which are cheaper to build and become homeowners' responsibilities as part of compulsory management agreements. And we all know what's happened to those over time. Finally, car parking, which is a recurrent problem throughout New Hartley. Ignoring the impracticality of Condition 10, visitor parking, which HMD's own admission does not comply with previous or current standards, individual on-plot parking is now less for the same house types. So we end up with a two-tier and reduced quality development. Is that what this committee wants? And I'm not even going to touch on
Thank you,
sustainable
sir.
development. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. The next speaker this afternoon is Graham Eastwood. Mr. Eastwood, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I think as you've heard, the local community have significant concerns regarding the further amendments proposed to this particular development. Seaton Valley Council consider there are two main planning issues. Number one, the applicant has not demonstrated that there is evidence enough to support the proposed change in the mix of the house sizes. And secondly, the substantial adverse impacts on the reduction in the level of open space on both the character of the area and the amenity to the residents. With regard to the first issue of the reduction in the number of two-bedroom properties and increase to 3 or 4-bedroom properties, it would appear that the only evidence submitted by the applicant for this change is the market demand for larger properties rather than properties that are needed by the community. Local plan policy HOU 5 is clear that development proposals should be assessed according to how well they contribute to meeting the needs and aspirations of those living and seeking to move into Northumberland. This reflects national policy in terms of which requires planning policies to reflect the size, type and tenure of housing needed for different groups within the community. It is acknowledged that the proposal would not result in a reduction of the level of affordable housing to be provided on this particular site. However, the provision of smaller market homes are needed within the parish as as defined by recent housing needs survey information that was provided from New Hartley. If the application is approved, this would result in the development not contributing to meet local needs as required in policy HOU 5. Although the Northumberland Strategic Housing Market Assessment does not contain parish-level information, it highlights the need for the provision of smaller open market housing in the southeast of the county. Furthermore, the overall household size is projected to decrease, and particularly because of the ageing population, there is a need to provide homes for those looking to downsize, and the proposed changes are clearly inconsistent with these particular matters. Local Plan INF 5 requires open space that is provided as part of new development to be of an appropriate standard and fit for purpose. Policy QOP 1 requires new development to support health and well-being and positive social interaction. Furthermore, Policy QOP 4 requires the incorporation of well-designed landscaping in any new development. The approved development included 3 important areas of open space in the central parts of the actual site, one of which was the part of the site which is now under construction. The remaining 2 areas are proposed to be reduced in size, if not disappear completely. Their function will change if this proposal is approved. This reduction would reduce the ability of new residents to access open space and would also impact on the character of the development, contrary to the requirements of policies INF 5, QOP 1 and QOP 4. The committee report highlights the fact that stated there will only be 0.01 hectares reduction in open space. However, it must be acknowledged that the vast majority of proposed open space lies within the area of the east of Lisdon Burn, which is not a part to be developed. I think it's quite arrogant of Barrett to actually start commencing the work on this planning amendment, considering it's not even been approved yet, and quite clearly some of that work is already going ahead. I think we've also seen, as the planning officer has clearly stated, we've already had contraventions of previous conditions laid down by this committee to ensure that applications go through. Those contraventions are still happening and will continue to happen because they have no care for the conditions that you as a committee lay down on this particular company. It's about profit, it's not about need. And our people believe, and the council, Seaton Valley Council, believe it's about need. We urge members of this committee to refuse the application in accordance with the detailed requirements of the newly adopted local plan. This will ensure that our residents have access to homes that are needed and open space which is so valuable to their health and to their well-being. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. And finally, this afternoon, I'd like to invite Amy Ward, Planning Manager from Barrett Homes. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. The original planning permission for this development was granted over 4 years ago in September 2017, albeit the application was in fact submitted in 2015. Since this time, minor amendments have been made to house types, but overall the housing mix has remained unchanged. As we progressed on the first phase of this development, with 29 homes now complete and occupied, it is apparent that the local housing market has changed since 2015 when the scheme was initially designed. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has also had a significant influence. The demand has never been higher for larger properties, and sales reflect this. People are looking for larger homes with more space for living, partly fueled by the time we have spent in our homes over the last few years, as well as a notable increase in the many prospective purchasers now looking for additional space to allow for home working. For example, someone previously looking for a 2-bed house as a minimum requirement now needs a 3-bed house. Responding to these new considerations, this application to vary conditions proposes a replan of the next phase of development to include a small reduction in 2-bed homes of around 5% in favour of some additional 3-bed and 4-bed houses. The total number of houses remains unchanged at 285 plots. The Council's Housing Department have been consulted on the application and have no objection to the revised housing mix. Significantly, in terms of affordability, there are no changes proposed to the total number, size or tenure of the proposed affordable housing, which remains at 43 houses, including 33 2-bed homes and 10 3-bed homes as per the approved scheme. This amounts to 15% on-site affordable housing provision, 5% above the newly adopted local plan policy requirement, which is just 10%. The change in site layout not only allows a change to the housing mix, but is also intended to enhance the outlook and usage of the open space available on the development for existing and future residents. A greater number of houses will now have exposure to these open spaces. The quantity of open space compared to the approved scheme has not changed. Barrett is, however, looking to improve the quality and usability of the open space for both residents of the development and the wider village of New Hartley. The conical mound has been removed from the design. Although proposed as a place-making feature when the scheme was originally designed in 2015, it is no longer considered the most effective or practical use, and instead the focus is now on creating more usable and desirable public open space with enhanced views over the Burn and the wider Northumberland countryside. The open spaces are no longer bordered by roads and are now contained by the houses, creating safe spaces with natural surveillance. There is a near continuous green corridor through the site with footpaths linking to the public right-of-way and seating areas to support meaningful use of the open space. Updated landscaping plans have been submitted with improvements to the planting scheme, both in terms of biodiversity gains and its recreational value, over and above that which forms part of the approved scheme. This includes enhanced wildlife-friendly landscape features, for example over 500 metres of new hedgerows where previously there was none. Significantly, there is now a play park proposed on the east edge of the site adjacent to the public right-of-way with natural play facilities to encourage physical activity for a range of users. No play facilities were previously proposed. It is considered that the proposed variation of the housing mix and site layout in the second phase of this development will lead to a number of improvements. The housing mix will be more effective in meeting demand, and the changes to the layout has allowed improvements to the structure of the development, offering better interaction with green spaces. We have designed the scheme in consultation with the relevant technical teams at the Council, including the lead local flood authority and highways, and this is reflected in the consultee feedback. The Office's support for the revised scheme is welcome, and we hope that members will approve the application in accordance with that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, the committee, we now come to the point where you are invited to ask questions to the planning officers. But I was wondering if I could kick off with a question, first of all, to Rob Murphin. Graham Eastwood, he says that the changes in house types don't reflect local need, but market demand. You know, how are we, as a planning committee, able to wriggle with that one?
Thanks, Chair. as Tamsin set out in her presentation, we do not have up-to-date, detailed housing need assessments at this grade of detail for this part of the county. So in the absence of information pointing one way or the other, we have to look at what's tabled in terms of a design as being acceptable or not. The local plan issues we can pick up later, because there are a number of issues playing out here in relation to the new local plan, but we can discuss those and how soon they'll come up in other questions.
Members of the committee. Start with Barry Flux. Barry, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the trim trail, which is new to this. Well, there's a trim trail in one of the developments in Cramlington, and it looks frankly ghastly, to be honest. I'm not suggesting this could be totally brilliant. However, this trim trail, if it's built, who's going to pay for it in terms of its maintenance? Is it going to be part of the, the service charge to the residents on this estate? Is it ever going to be transferred to Seaton Valley Council, and then the Seaton Valley Council taxpayers pay for it? Although I suspect there might be a bit more concern about it from Seaton Valley Council, because I suspect the developer will want it done, gone, eventually. So I've just got some questions about, if it gets damaged, who pays for it? Because no doubt it would get damaged if it's used well. And would there be a long contract for it? Does it belong for 25 years and then it's transferred? What's the ins and outs of that?
Chair, if I can answer this one,
Yes.
but I'll let Tamsin jump in if she has any further information on this. What will happen, as does on all new estates like this, is that for the first few years, the areas of open space, landscaping and play space will be managed by the housing company, and then that will be passed on to a company separate, which will be run by the charges levied from all the properties. What can be done later on, but we have no information about this at the moment, is that as time moves on, then the residents can get together if they are not happy with the level of charge or the quality. There will be provisions for them to set their own company up, and that happens on other estates. Okay, so to answer your question, the maintenance rests with the occupiers of the estate.
Okay, thank you. I'll consider that for the debate. Thank you.
Georgina Hill.
Thank you. Just to try to sort of get to some conclusive thinking on this, it doesn't seem that there's a housing needs assessment that we could hang on in terms of if attempted to object. Obviously, a housing developer wanting to get more bang for the buck and making a profit is obvious, but it's not a ground to object to planning application. One thing, and I'd look for some guidance on it, the design does look like a detriment. I mean, if you look at the two pictures, it's not just because it was drawn in a more green way, but there was more green space, it just looked better. So it would be useful, maybe not now, but when Rob sums up about it, just to get some guidance on the point of design, whether that would be potentially a route to object to.
Thank you.
Actually, to allow us to keep the debate going properly, to pick up in questions, can I come on to a couple of those issues? Come to those issues now, actually. When we adopted the local plan, a question was asked by one of the members of the council: can we revisit decisions already made in terms of requirement? And I made the point very clearly that no, it doesn't apply retrospectively, but as new applications come to the table, including changes, we can look to roll out the aims and objective of what the plan is trying to do. Okay. And I think what you're seeing here is a bit of a curious beast, in that it's a scheme that was issued an approval by the planning inspectorate. It was refused by the county council. So where are we with it? and it's a mixed bag. Very clearly, and we have to be objective about this, the amount of open space is significantly above new local plan requirements. Okay? That's a statement of fact. Okay? There's been a number of iterations of how the space is laid out, and there are certainly improvements and enhancements to what is now tabled, and there is a nod to the healthy lifestyles issue as well, which is also a thrust of the plan. It is clear, though, it is different to what was expected originally, but that is not one of the issues looking at. In terms of affordable housing, it is also going above new local plan requirements. Okay, and that again is an objective fact, and that is a significant issue. Okay. Had we been starting off with a purely blank piece of paper at this stage, if this was a new application coming in, we would be trying to negotiate to reach the positions on the amount of open space and the amount of affordable housing. Okay. We would also potentially be looking at a different layout, and I would always point you to I think the very good example of the St George's schemes that Homes England did in Morpeth that we granted just after Christmas. I think it's a good example of a modern approach to design. So here we are trying, in terms of the design, to amend things where many of the decisions have already been made in terms of much of the development's already been started. And what Tamsin has done has tried to negotiate the best quality outcome on the design front, but we still must acknowledge that on the two big messages in terms of open space and affordable housing, this is going above new local plan requirements. So there's an issue of horse trading here to some extent. And again, I will re-emphasise that had we been starting off back in 2015 again now, the entire site design may have been looked at differently. Okay. However, what's been tabled now is regarded as being acceptable, and with the amendments also acceptable. Just to come on quickly to finish off the local plan, there are issues in that in terms of visitor spaces that it doesn't meet the new local plan requirement. However, I would say that if this was a site that was in a location where we knew there was going to be an extremely significant parking problem, that we would have potentially used that as a reason for pushing back. However, given it's a large housing estate, the reduction in formalised visitor spaces should not be a problem because of the sheer amount of on-street availability. And Highways Development Management have looked at that in the round and concluded that in terms of the overall design for parking, that there isn't a reason that would be sustainable as a reason for refusal. So it's very much a mixed bag. I wanted to cover the fact that from a new local plan basis, but actually the headline messages are covered and do exceed new policy requirements. Thank you.
Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So I've got a few questions. First one being, with regards to the bigger houses, the plots that they're going to be sitting on, are they going to be just the 2-bed plots and 3-bed houses, 4-bed houses squeezed onto the smaller plots, so less living space for the people that buy them? The section 106, in here it says basically that would be unreasonable to ask for these contributions that were suggested for education and healthcare. Why would it be unreasonable when we're going to be expecting more people to be living on the estates? Because there's going to be, if you've got 3 and 4 bedroom houses, there's going to be more like children and like more adults as well. So there will be extra demand there. And with regards to previously, they've come back and reduced the number of visitor parking spaces. Are we 100% confident that with 3 and 4 bedroom houses with more people living there, that there's not going to be random car parking? Because I've visited new estates recently and there is an issue here. And if there isn't a sufficient visitor parking, people are living at home longer. So you've got teenagers staying at home with their cars. So you suddenly have a 4-bedroomed house with potentially 4 cars in it. Is there actually enough parking there, especially as cars get bigger and driveways get smaller? So they're my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. When we talk about reasonable to ask for contributions to education and healthcare, what we mean is reasonable on the basis of the evidence. And both education and the NHS, through our contacts, were consulted on this, and they have not said that the evidence in terms of local capacity justifies a request for funding at this stage. We ask for funding where we can sustain that request as being reasonable. It's very clear that new development causes an increased pressure on services, but we have to be able to demonstrate that existing facilities and existing services will be pushed into a position of operational stress by this. So in this case, the evidence isn't there to suggest that. And that has to be a strength of this approach, in that in some places we will ask for a very, very significant contribution to education, say, but that is on the basis of where we can evidence it. So we don't just ask for it as a nice to have, it has to be asked for on an evidenced basis. Okay. In terms of the plot size, can you talk about that, Tamsin?
Yes, yeah. So I think it's not a matter of them taking 2-bedroom properties off and then putting 4-bedroom properties on the same plot. The layout's being changed and the plot sizes have been changed as well, and parking as well. So for the 2-bedroom properties that were on there, I think there were just there was just one car park space for each of those properties, but that's been increased, the parking on site, so it accords with policy for 3- and 4-bedroom properties. So yeah, the plot sizes have changed as well, and throughout the application as well. I have also asked for changes myself. I looked at every individual plot just to make sure that the amenity space provided for each of these plots was sufficient, and also that there was adequate privacy distances between houses. So some of the house types and plots have been changed as a result of that as well. So there's going to be no further impact on residential amenity as well.
Yeah. Can I just follow up on that question? You know, you say we've got more visitor parking spaces with the larger homes, but what about the question of...
Sorry, no, there was more parking on the individual plots.
Yes, but the question is that, you know, the bigger houses will attract more visitors, so might we get those visitors spilling out onto the roads? You don't think that's going to be a problem?
Can I come in on this?
Yeah.
Parking is always going to be an issue, and clearly there'll be circumstances where there will be on-street parking. We cannot make provision for the absolute peaks, say if someone is having a birthday party or whatever, okay? What we have to look at is what is reasonable, and with the changes to, let's call it on-site parking within the properties, that the provision for visitor parking over and above that is considered reasonable on this site in this location. In other places, for example, if it was a site in the middle of Morpeth, say, we may be looking for an even lower amount of visitor parking, or we may be asking for a significantly high one, depending on what the pressures were on the local highway network. And there aren't parking restrictions proposed within the estate itself. So on the basis of all of that, it has been judged to be a reasonable level of provision. Okay. And I would add, adding on an parking provision is not always necessarily the right thing to do from a climate change perspective as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes. Councillor Robinson first, and then Mr. Swinburne.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions for Tams and one to Rob, if I may, for policy. Tams and the county ecologist has asked for revised landscape plans. Is he happy with that now?
Yes, yeah, the ecologist got no objections to the scheme. They're fine with it.
Thank you. Now,
Don't put that in.
with regards to public open space, what you said was the public open space is essentially where the swales are. Are we happy to, I mean, you know, a swale is inaccessible as far as I'm concerned.
I'm just getting the, sorry. Right, I'm just going to get the plans that would show the public open space. So this was what was previously approved on the left, and this is what is proposed now. It's just, I mean, the swales were identified as public open space in the previous plan. It's just, it's coloured green. It doesn't necessarily mean, I suppose, it's going to be used as public open space, but as it was identified in the previous plan, then there's kind of no change there. They're not saying that they're using it as public open space
I'm
now.
just
I suppose,
asking
yeah.
if we're, you know, if that's something we accept as public open space.
It's, I mean, it's identified as public open space, but it's whether or not, it's to people whether or not they can, whether or not they will use that. I suppose it's not going to have water in it all the time, so people do use these as amenity areas to walk along, and it's right next to the highway, the public rights of way as well, so people might meander onto the swales. Children might do that, but it's not necessarily going to be filled with water all the time. But you know, it was identified on the previous plan, and it's just shown green on this plan too. So there's no change really there.
Green space, I don't know, open space. Rob, can I ask you, the developers are saying they need 3 and 4 bed houses on the site at the expense of some of the 2-bed houses because of market pressure. Shouldn't that same market pressure be reflected in the affordable houses? Us, we're likely to get affordable houses that nobody wants them, if we're to believe the developer.
Yeah, that's a good question. What the developer's doing is not seeking to renegotiate the affordable housing offer, and because the issue is, as from my perspective, is that if we unpick this one and start again, that technically they only need to provide 10% rather than 15% on this site. The market pressure issue is an interesting one, and I think we can look at proxy sources of evidence on this, because I don't know what actual pressure the company gets in its sales office for people asking for bigger houses. But it has definitely been the case that since lockdown, we've experienced a significant increase in the interest to extend people's housing to allow for home working particularly, be that through the permitted development regime or through the need for planning applications. So, as an observation by the company that they have got increased demand for that, we're not in a place to dispute that, but I would suggest that there is probably evidence that there is a latent need out there for more space for home. I would say though as well that this scheme was first submitted in 2015, and it is highly usual for a scheme of that vintage to be changing its mix type, and that does change with market demands and sales rates. And sometimes we see changes come forward where 4 beds are reduced to 3 bed, or 2 beds are up to 3 bed. There is no, they will try and get one particular house type on the size to maximise profit. It is very much based on what they think the market will attract the best prices for that particular type of houses at the moment. So I have seen plenty of examples of smaller houses being swapped for larger ones and vice versa. What we always need to look at is the end product, in terms of what the scheme will be, when all these changes have been made, is it acceptable in planning terms? Remember, we're not looking at the starting point of the principle for the housing, we're looking at whether this new scheme is acceptable. And my big headline messages are that the affordable housing and the open space provisions are above local plan requirements. Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask, I understand what you said, Rob. My question was specifically about the affordable housing allocation and the types of the houses that's included in that. If the developers come along and say, we need 3, 4, 5 bedroom houses to satisfy local market, then shouldn't we be asking for 3, 4, 5 bedroom houses to satisfy affordable housing market?
Well, what we've done is we've consulted our housing team on this, and they have said that the affordable provision meets the requirements and need in that area as they understand it. Okay, and what I can't do is put words into our housing team. You know, they look at waiting lists and need, and they are saying that this offer is reasonable. I can just say, so just to finish, Councillor Robinson, is that they do not just say that to every application, and often they will ask for changes in mix of size if they think it needs to be changed. In this, they've said they're happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from Martin Swinbank. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about EV charging points. Are we in a position where we could condition those on this application or not? Obviously, if it was a new application today, we would, but are we in a position or not to be able to do that?
This has slightly been overtaken by events, and that as of this summer, the building regulations have changed and EV charging points will be required in the properties. Okay. The time when we were looking to require this issue was in the point of transition. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions from the committee? No? Could I have a proposal, please? Councillor Hutchinson.
To stimulate debate, Chairman, I'll propose the officer recommendation.
Is that seconded? By Councillor Stewart. Thank you. Members of the committee, your comments or... Councillor Flux.
Yes, Chair. I've got problems with this one because I've got every sympathy on this one. People have been talking, you know, we've had debate over years, you know, half decades gone on. And, you know, there's something presenting a Belvedere. Now, I might like a Belvedere, not like a Belvedere, might like a trim trail, might not like a trim trail. But people are looking at stuff based upon this. And people say it's an improvement. I don't think it looks particularly much better. I'll be honest. I don't know how I'm going to vote. I'm listening to the debate on this one because I would like to find something that I could find to stop it. I think we've gone to a position where it's, you know, the appeal's been lost. Many of the battles have been lost, unfortunately, once the appeals have been lost. But, you know, it's just attrition. You know, are we going to be here again talking about this application yet again in 6 months, a year's time, when this application, this site, should I say, because the market's changed again. You know, a couple of years' time, perhaps people have forgotten about COVID. I think we'd like it, but you know, will something else change market demands over that period? And you know, I just have every sympathy for the residents on this one because I just think it's change after change after change, and there's no certainty to it, and I just think that's desperately unfair on the residents. But I'll listen to the rest of the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. With this, I'm just really disappointed to see another application coming back asking for amendments for basically putting more profits into builders and developers' pockets again, rather than increasing the standard of living, the quality of living for the people on the estates. And I firmly believe that we should have some Section 106 money because bigger houses mean more people. It's as simple as that. And if there's more people, they're going to need dentists, they're going to need doctors, they're going to need education places across the area as well. But if we're not getting the Section 106 money, where are these places coming from? And the effect on people that already live in the area who are already queuing up to see a dentist, if they can find one. I just think we really should be looking for some Section 106 money on this. So I am disappointed to see this back, and I'm just wondering in the future how many more developers are we going to see coming back for changes again and again. And I just really think it's unfair on us. Thank you.
Chair, can I just ask that question? Yes. Chair, can I just jump on this point? Is the entire system uses this provision called Section 73, which is explicitly designed to allow developers to make changes to schemes. We cannot say no just because it is a change. It's a right they have to do this. What we have to look at is saying, is the end product effectively what we would have, supported initially? I know this one was refused initially, but market conditions do change, and as I've said a few moments ago, sometimes developers come back and ask to swap in for smaller units, and we will look at that. And sometimes there is a pushback that there isn't a need for smaller units, and that more larger houses are needed for for more space. So we need to look at what's in front of us, but we can't take the position that the developer is gaming the system as such by using Section 73s, because it is a very, very frequently, if not standard approach to refining housing schemes as they progress. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Chair. Some of us do go back a fair way. I'm just looking at the planning history here, and it was in 2014 when this first appeared, which probably meant that the plans were drawn up a year or two before that. So it really, this is a 10-year-old sort of a plan, and a lot has changed in 10 years. And I do recall this application going through the planning in 2016, and it was a dodgy decision then. It was against officer recommendation. We went to appeal because I think we classified the land as to be developed, or within the plans it was to be developed. So we went to appeal with no hope at all, and it cost the residents of this county, I think, was over £100,000 to fight it. So here we are again. There ain't many tools left in the box. I believe that what the changes are minor. Things have changed. They've definitely changed over the last 3 years. So I'm quite happy with this, and I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. I think we've touched on, whilst we accept that there's no changes to house numbers, it doesn't mean the new plans will represent the same amount of occupants. I really do have concerns about this scheme. You've got more 4-bedroom houses, so presumably more families and children, yet nothing for education. And from what I'm hearing, the green spaces are not really usable if the swales are where the children are going to play. So I do have concerns. I also think if they're going on market demand, we're 2 years into a global pandemic with people working from home. But we know that things change daily, and we've got a cost of living crisis. And if I was, thinking about buying a house, and I just think market demand could be different tomorrow. And I think I'm hearing that we don't have clear evidence or up-to-date reliable evidence of what's needed in the area. So I think what's needed and what is acceptable, it's just, this development, I don't think I can support. I know it's going to go through, but I just,
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I've listened to the debate. I've kept very quiet and just listened. I haven't heard any material considerations why it should be refused. And that's what a planning authority is supposed to look at, material considerations. Now I'm going to talk about something that's a non-material consideration. Last week, somebody said, wouldn't it be great if we spent more time on design to give a character to our homes? And to be honest, if you go along that A19, and the A19 is only the next stop along from New Hartley into North Tyneside, it's red brick after red brick after red brick of housing. I'm kind of pleased that people are prepared to move into Northumberland, into 3 and 4 bedroom homes. It shows that we're starting to get some form of quality. And I've looked at the designer here, and I don't know Tasman, I've never met her before in my life, but I think you've had a lot of prolonged discussions to get design and layout correct on this rather big estate. Councillor Flux asked before about a cost to residents. I visited with a family member in Morpeth Estate about 3 years ago, and I was shocked to find out that a cost that Castle Morpeth would have picked up at one time, once the developer walked away, was now being picked up by the residents. And I find that I'm buying a new house shortly, and I've got to pick up the tab as well. But what I have to say to myself, it's like being a parish councillor, I'm sure Councillor Eastwood appreciates this. By paying that, you can make that service better. You can enhance it better. So I would suggest that the residents themselves can make that estate better by making sure they employ the right people to look after the amenities that will be on site. So I've gone on a bit, Chair. I didn't mean to, but I will be voting for this because I cannot overall see any material considerations to refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more contributions? As the chair, I might make a contribution. I think this is very much a mixed bag. It isn't initially an application that we've approved. We've inherited it from the planning inspector. It's never quite the same. And I too, enjoyed listening to John Barrell and Graham Eastwood. I think they made some, good points, some sensible points about people and places, about good design, well-designed place. But I do feel here that, as Councillor Wallace has just said, on the whole there, nicks and tweaks. We've listened to our planning consultees, people in our department who look after affordable housing, who look after highways, who look after public space, and they all seem content. So, while, I too would like to give John Barrell and Graham Eastwood what they're after, I don't think the planning reasons are there to turn this down, and I too will be voting in favour. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, can I ask Mr Hutchinson to finally sum up and give us his conclusion?
Thank you, Chairman. I thought this would have been a really easy one, to tell you the truth, but it's had a real long history, which I wasn't aware until I saw the actual application. Listening to people, there's a lot of concern over it. But there's no, as you said yourself, there's no real planning reason to refuse this, an actual planning reason. The fact that the developer could make more profit, finance isn't a planning reason. You can't use that as a reason to refuse it. So I'm convinced that if this went to appeal, as Councillor Dodd said, it would cost the county, the taxpayer, a lot of money, because I'm sure we'd lose on appeal. So I would urge everybody to vote for this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, that's the conclusion from the mover of the motion. Ladies and gentlemen, this application has been moved for approval. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Thank you. And those abstaining? Thank you. That application is approved. Thank you. Next item on the agenda this afternoon is the appeal update report for information. Are members happy to accept that? And we also have section 106 update report as well on from page 65 to 68.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
And it'll be to Rob. The 106 contributions. Existing building sites where we've entered into 106 agreements with developers, based on the district plans, based on what was in them, are they now to be changed in line with our new local plan, or will they be existing as far as the build-out goes?
Through the chair, a section 106 cannot be unilaterally changed by the developer because it's an agreement with us. What it requires is a deed of variation, and we normally do that if something changes on the site or they come in, say, with a section 73 scheme, we would look to renegotiate it. But if nothing else changes, the only thing that could come up is that they could say market conditions have changed such that we can't afford to pay it, or the sites cost too much to develop, and that would then be a deed of variation, and we would bring that to committee for a decision. Thanks. So the answer very quickly, sorry, is no, we can't retrospectively go and update either permissions that have been made or legal agreements that have been duly signed into.
Thank you. Yes. Karen Thompson.
Following on from what you've just said there, Rob, when we ask developers, because this relates slightly to the previous application, for financial reasons as to why they can't do things, do we then get detailed cost-benefit analysis to their developments, or do we just take it on their word that they can't afford to do X, Y, and Z?
No. At one time we might have done that, but what we do now, we have our in-house valuation team from our property division will look at it, and if it's a relatively straightforward viability assessment, they can give us advice. If it's complex, and I'm thinking of the southwest sector in Cramlington, where it was a hugely complex viability assessment, we will bring in additional consultants to look at it and to check it as well. And there's be a back and forth thing over costs. Okay. But the answer, again, to be short, no, we don't. We absolutely do not just take them on face value.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I have... Oh, one more question. Sorry, Councillor Stewart.
And I have another point to make as well, if you don't mind, Chair.
Yes, of course.
And I hope it is a good question. Rob, section 106, can we have some training, please?
Yeah, what that was a good question, because what I was going to say is that the new local plan, and you saw it play out a little today, in terms of some, what I call top-tier metrics, the affordable housing numbers, the open space amounts. A huge amount of changes will play out with the existing policy base, because it isn't that we're just updating policy, we are updating in different parts of the county from the different district plans. So there will be a programme of training on both changes arising from the new local plan, and one of those will be the entire issue of 106. Because what has also changed, and this almost relates to the question from Councillor Irena Thompson, is that the new local plan has been fully viability assessed at the plan level. So in other words, where we've had information on education need, health need, highways need, etc., we've had a rough guess at how much each housing scheme will need to contribute, and that's been viability assessed for the full plan. So we've been into the level of details, for example, of how much it costs to build garages on sites and how much that reflects in the cost of the overall property. So we went into all manner of detail. That won't take away the need for detailed viability assessments on every site, because I'm certain that some developers will say, oh, we got on site and it proved to be more expensive to develop than we thought. But I'm hoping that this new way of doing 106s will make it a lot more objective and transparent. Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. Any more questions, committee? No? No urgent business today. I'd just like to thank you all for your attendance and thank you for your contributions. Thank you.